reactions trail judgment of the Presidential Election Petitions Court as parties plan to appeal verdict at the Supreme Court. On the interview segment for today, we focus on the judgment of the 2023 Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal as the court affirms victory of President Tinubu, with a lawyer, Ibrahim Lawal, as our guest, as well as the special advisor to the president on media and publicity, Ajurin Galali, for discussion on President Tinubu's India mission. Welcome to Politics Tonight. Stay with us. We will be right back. Thanks a lot for staying with us. You're still watching Politics Tonight, digging beyond the headlines. And now let's get to some developments in the polity. Reactions have continued to trail the judgment of the 2023 Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal, which upheld the victory of President Bola Tinubu. Correspondent Ademola Lawrence reports.
Acknowledged by many Nigerians as the longest judgment ever given in Nigeria's political history. For over 12 hours, the justices took time to break down the plea put forward by the petitioners, APM, Labour Party and People's Democratic Party.
ET seat 0523 are all devoid of merit. The petitions are hereby dismissed.
At the end, the five-man panel upheld the victory of President Bola Tinubu at the poll.
Accordingly, I affirm the declaration and return of Bola Ahmed Tinubu by the Independent National Electoral Commission Annex as the duly elected president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
But some Nigerians see the judgment differently. Many say there's a need to move forward and put the unity of the country first.
They don't expect the court to go to the market and start looking for evidence there and there to support the judge. I think that's what I heard from the judgment, and I think it's good. Next time, if you want to fight for something that you believe in, you should be able to prove beyond any reasonable doubt.
Nigerians should just accept their fate, because there is nothing we can do about it anyway. So we should just hope for the better Nigeria that everyone has been longing and hoping for.
Boxing ring, if that kind of judgment comes, you are a winner already. But what I would advise the winner, it should not feel too important, too big. It should bring everybody together. Let's hope for a better Nigeria.
Well, all the other political parties should try and base up for the next 4 years. They should go and prepare and plan for the next 4 years. So they should forget about going to Supreme Court or whatever.
Already, the judgment has been rejected by the Labour Party and PDP. They believe they will get justice in the next journey with the Supreme Court to decide who truly won the 25th of February presidential election. Ademola Lawrence, TVC News, Lagos.
Let's go for a short break, and when we return, it will be time to speak with our first guest of the day, who is a lawyer, Ibrahim Lawal, for discussion on the judgment of the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal as the court affirms victory of President Bola Tinubu. Stay with us. Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us. Now, let's join our guest for today. I am joined by a lawyer, Ibrahim Lawal, for discussion on the judgment of the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal as the court affirms victory of President Tinubu. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
It's a pleasure.
You would agree with me that yesterday saw a decisive judicial resolution of the credibility questions that have hovered around the president's election over 6 months. What's your impression about the judgment?
Well, let me first and foremost salute and give kudos to the judges who have painstakingly looked at the petitions and have determined the petition the way it has done. They determined the petition based on law and sound principle of law. We need to commend them for a job well done. You know, judiciary cannot speak. You have to also speak for them. So we need to salute them. We need to give kudos to them. Yesterday, they were there for like 12 hours delivering such judgment. So we need to give kudos to them. What emanated from the court yesterday was nothing but, the true principle of law. There was nothing that was stated in that judgment yesterday that was new. Is it the issue of nomination of the vice president, which the Court of Appeal had settled in the case between PDP and INEC in part 1900 of the Grand Weekly Law Report, where they said that no political party can challenge the nomination of another political party. That any political party who decide to do that is nothing but a busybody and a noisemaker. Supreme Court has settled that. And it is straight principle of law too that when you bring an action before a court, you need to also, who allege, must prove. You must back your actions with evidence. You don't come to court and start fishing for evidence, or you want the court to help you to make sense of your case. You are the owner of your case. You must bring evidence before the court to prove your assertion, which they have failed to do. And your witnesses must be credible. You must have credible evidence, to prove your case. And from what you have heard from judges yesterday, from my lords, who sat and listened not only to the witnesses, they also looked at their demeanor. They came to the realization that the petition, the 3 petitions before them, had no merit. And we must commend them for having that boldness to say it as it is. It is also an opportunity for Nigerians to actually know what actually happened at the tribunal, beyond what we read on social media. And the reality about cases is that cases are not won by emotion. It is won by hard facts. You need to have your facts, and know how to use those facts, to prove your case, which all the petitioners in this circumstance have failed woefully to do. It is unfortunate that people are taking the issue of elections, democracy beyond what is supposed to be. If you are taking the fact that in electoral contest, you win, you lose. And when you lose, you go back and prepare for the next time. So, to me, what has come out of that judgment yesterday is the true position of the law and cannot be faulted by anybody.
All right, then. So before yesterday, there was so much noise about the tribunal. How will you describe the response by the justices?
Well, that's why I said I salute them. The justices are not bothered about the noise in the market. They will tell you that they are to, dispense justice without favor, without, fear of favor, affection or ill will. And that, my lords have done yesterday. You can see them delivering the judgment, with confidence that this is the position of the law and they were espousing it. Regardless of the noise, regardless of, the threat and intimidation of my lords, at different fora. To the extent that some people have to say all eyes are on the judiciary. You have seen the eyes that are on the judiciary and they did not falter. So I challenge them that against the threat, against intimidation, they were able to do justice to the case yesterday. So we should commend them, for rising beyond those threats, to state the true position of the law.
All right. But again, what's your assessment of the tone of the justices, especially with how the petitioners handled their cases at the court?
No, the thing is that what the judgment revealed to us was the candy manner in which, the petitioners handled their case. The judgment yesterday revealed the fact that The petition itself, the three petitions are nothing but empty shells. It was also revealed, yesterday that the petitioners were not serious with their petition. How can you, as a petitioner, presidential election petitioner, wanting to overturn the election in the whole federation with 13 witnesses? And all those witnesses, there were no polling agents. Even when you look at even the pleadings, the judgment revealed to us that the pleading was nothing but, just a concoction. You pleaded about several polling units without naming specific polling units you are referring to. Those are nebulous, pleadings that will not stand the test of time. And that was why a lot of paragraphs in their pleadings had to be struck out yesterday, because it does not make sense. It was vague, it was nebulous. So yesterday's judgment exposed, the tardiness of the handlers of those petitions as people who are not serious in prosecuting their petition to a logical conclusion. They were just interested in the noise around the petition and nothing more. It has shown to us, and I want to give kudos, to the president of the Court of Appeal, who gave approval that the judgment should be heard live. I can assure you that if the judgment was not heard live, we would have been hearing different news. But because everybody had it, no one can come and begin to bamboozle us again. And so it makes everybody to be clear about what was the issue. And people now knew that those who are making noise about petitions are not serious with the petition. So it was a blessing that the judgment was had live. And so everybody now knew that those people are not serious about prosecuting their petition.
All right, so still talking about lack of seriousness on the part of the petitioners, I'm curious, how difficult is it to prove malpractice and overvoting at the national scale? Is it really an extremely impossible threshold, or still some sort of lack of seriousness on the part of the petitioners?
Well, it is not true. You see, there are plethora of cases. In fact, since 1999, from the era of Buhari and Obasanjo, there had been cases, decided by the Supreme Court on how to prove violence, on how to prove malpractice in an election petition. It has been settled by the Supreme Court that if you are talking about violence, you need to bring, your polling agents or any person who witnessed that event. You can't go and bring witnesses. They brought witnesses who are not themselves at the place of occurrence of the event. You brought them to come and give evidence. You said there are violence in Kogi State. The person you brought to come and give evidence voted in Abuja and did not go to Kogi at all. I would court believe such evidence. It is clearly hearsay. So the law is very clear as to the ingredients, as to what you need to prove, violence, to prove malpractices, and so on and so forth. It is the evidence of those who saw those things happening and no other person. You cannot go and bring somebody who is alien to that situation and say he's giving evidence. It does not work. You brought reports of election monitors. Those people are not there to be cross-examined. You just brought a report and you want the court to believe that report. When the report has not gone through, the fullness of cross-examination, nobody will believe such evidence. So it is just that we have decided not to throw the part of law, because the law is settled as to how we are going to prove any allegations in an election petition.
All right.
And it is very clear what you need.
So considering the unanimous lessons that have been picked from this unanimous judgment, what aspects of the judgment will you consider as key to having credible elections in Nigeria?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the lesson I have that should be drawn from that is that what is important about election is that election starts and ends at the polling unit. That the basis upon free and fair election is the declaration of result at the polling unit. And so every political party must ensure that they have representatives at the polling unit, which they call agents. They must have their agent at the polling unit. We discovered that even those who went to court, particularly the Labour Party, do not have their agents in all the polling units in Nigeria. And so it is very important, it is very key. The lesson one must take away from this judgment is that as a political party, you must have your agent who must insist on taking results that was declared at the polling unit. It has happened in so many cases. But where you now want to rely on election being uploaded at IRED, it is clear now that the position of IRED is just to make people aware of what they're doing. It's like an entertainment to the whole world. That is not the basis upon which elections or results are declared. Results are declared at the polling unit, and copies of such results given to agents of political parties. So political parties must be serious. If you know you want to run for an election, you must be serious to mobilize agents at the polling unit where election results will be declared. Votes are counted, sorted, and the election declared. You must have and ensure that you have a copy of the result. So if you now have issues with the result at the end of the day, you'll be able to tender the copy of the result which you have. So those are the takeaway from the judgment.
All right, so the PDP and the Labour Party have rejected these judgments and vowed to appeal it. What's your take on that?
Well, it is within their constitutional right,
absolutely,
to still appeal that judgment. They are just exercising their right, and that right cannot be taken away from them. There is a constitutional right, but I can assure them that I do not see any reprieve they will get from the Supreme Court, because this judgment is a pronouncement of law, a settled principles of law. A lot of issues that were settled there are not novel. They were issues that had been settled by the Supreme Court. So I wish them luck if they decide to test the law at the Supreme Court. It is within their power, and it is within their constitutional right to do so. So I wish them well. But like I said, I am afraid it is going to still result to the same thing.
Now, on several occasions, elections in Nigeria always end in the court. Is this about politicians, the lawyers, or the process?
Well, I think it is about us as a people. People do not, want to accept defeat. There are times when the process itself is fraught with some irregularities, it was not deceive ourselves. But since the introduction of beavers, particularly on the issue of accreditation, it has reduced, and I feel that people should learn to be good losers. When they lose, they should. But at the same time, a lot of reform we have seen in the electoral process was as a result of the fact that people allege, the outcome in court, and the pronouncement of court had become, a form of a law that had been, amended and strengthened in our, electoral jurisprudence. So, in a way, when people challenge election in court, It also enriched our electoral, laws, such that when we want to make amends or do amendment to our laws, they take into account all those things. So it is a welcome development when people go to challenge elections, and like I said, it's the most civilized thing to do anyway. So we can't condemn those who go to, to challenge the outcome of elections in court. But in doing so, we must be sure of our facts. When we have our facts, we have our evidence clearly, we can approach the court. But it will be wrong just for the sake of just going to court, we just go to court and waste the precious time of the court. That is what I frown at. If you look at the petition, the 3 petitions, as far as I'm concerned, it's just a sheer waste of judicial time.
So, we've talked about the petitioners, but then the court said each of the petitions was unmeritorious, using fact and law to ground its verdicts in each of the cases. Would you agree that this is some kind of indictment on some of your colleagues?
Now, well, it is not indictment anyway. The reality about cases is that, more often than not, when a client approaches, a lawyer, and said you want to challenge this election, even when at times when you advise your client that this matter, I said just go to court. It happens to me. There was a case they brought to me, and I said this matter cannot fly. Even if you go to court, I said go to court, want to make a statement. So there are so many reasons why people go to court, particularly political parties. They will tell you that if they don't go to court after election, there is no way they will mobilize their members to still believe in that party. So there are so many reasons. So it is not an indictment on our colleague, because our colleague would work on the available, evidence that is, given to them. They are not the owner of the case. Their own is to make use of the available facts that they have, to prepare that petition. So that's the thing. So there are so many reasons why people approach the court, not necessarily at times that they want to win.
So to wrap this up, how will you rate outcome of the election in view of the verdict of the tribunal?
Well, I've always been of the opinion that in the election that we had, that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu emerged as winner, was one of the best and fairest elections we have ever had in Nigeria. Forget about the noise that people make. I have been a close watcher of events. I have witnessed election in this country, from 1999, and I know how election has been conducted. I can assure you that this election that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu emerged was one of the fairest elections we have ever conducted. So the judgment of the tribunal is just an attestation to the fact that that election was free and fair.
All right. Thank you so much.
I have no doubt, right from the word go.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Ibrahim Lawal. Mr. Lawal is a lawyer. Thank you so much for your perspective on the judgment of the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you.
Welcome. My pleasure.
Now let's take a short break, and when we return, it will be time to speak with our second guest of the day, who is the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Ajuri Ngelale, for discussion on President Tinubu's India mission. Please stay with us.
Voted as the best TV station of the year. TVC News breaks into the core of every event as they happen, following all nationwide big and impactful stories. Without the news from every perspective, covering every human angle. I am Veronica, bringing you the news you would want to watch.
Welcome back and thank you so much for staying with us. This is Politics Tonight, digging beyond the headlines. And now to our interview with the second guest of the day. I am joined by the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Ajuri Ngelale, tonight to discussing President Tinubu's India mission. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Always a pleasure having you on the Politics Tonight. Thank you.
Good evening to you, my sister, and good evening to all of our viewers. Thank you for having me.
Right. The president is in India for the G20 summit. What's the significance for the country?
Well, I think the significance truly is multiple-fold. On the one hand, you have His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu making landmark progress. It would take a very deep dive back into our history to think of a time in which a head of state in Nigeria went overseas and secured $14 billion worth of investment pledges in a period of 2 days, as Mr. President has just done in India. Aside from, and we'll go into the specifics of that in a moment, aside from that, the president has made it very clear around the world, the reports are coming in that the Nigerian president means business. He is not attending a summit to appear to be fraternizing with people. He's not attending a summit to be part of some cool kids club. He is attending a summit with business on his mind, with one focus, which is attracting new industries, factories, and facilities and investments to Nigeria to add new jobs for Nigerians and to expand the revenue generation base through increased, tax revenue for, enhanced revenues for public service delivery. This is the focus of the president. And so if you appreciating that part of it, you now look at the other part of it, which is that the president is also making clear that not only does Nigeria mean business, but that its role geopolitically as the leader of West Africa and as the largest democracy in Africa and the largest economy in Africa, that we must now have a frontline seat at every meaningful global table. And that is the message Mr. President is bringing to the G20.
Right. Now, one of the highlights of this visit is the Memorandum of Understanding with Anduja Group for investment in Nigeria and automobile industry. What are the prospects for manufacturers in the country?
The prospects are deep and wide-ranging. So I'm just going to take a moment to kind of incisively go into what it is His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has achieved for Nigeria over the last 2 days. First and foremost, the president, through his personal intervention, I did have the privilege of being in the room when His Excellency Mr. President, certain investors, and I can say that the president was able to deal with those very specific issues that.
Are you there? Sajiri, can you hear me?
Hello?
All right, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that momentary disconnection. So he took the time to not only engage with over 20 Indian industrialists and chief executives from major industries across multiple sectors, but then went one-on-one, had one-on-one engagements with each of these investors to ensure that the specific areas of concern that they raised directly with the president He was in the room with them telling them, look, I want to link you up with this minister, this official, that official. Whatever encumbrance is in your way, is in the way of the success of your company doing business in Nigeria, I, as president, will ensure that it's removed. And that's the kind of hands-on leadership that we are now, going to be benefiting from to attract further investments in the country. But specifically now, you had essentially the Indorama, which is a company that obviously deals with fertilizer production and the production of petrochemicals. They came to the president with a specific request with respect to an intervention that needed to be made by the NNPCL. The president calls NNPCL, the GCEO Mele Kyari, into his office and says, look, this is my expectation. I want this solved. Within 3 weeks, that problem, that bottleneck was crushed. And now, as a result of that intervention by Mr. President, that we have now secured an $8 billion investment from Indorama to expand their petrochemical and fertilizer production facility in the country. That's number one. Number two, there was another investor by the name of Jitendra Sachdeva, who is the CEO of Skipper Seal Power Company Limited. Effectively, he had an investment of about $1.6 billion hanging as a result of a bottleneck that he found in the system of bureaucracy that we have, that he now brought to the president. And within about 10 minutes with the president absolutely destroyed that bottleneck. So as a result of that personal intervention by the president, we've unlocked a $1.6 billion investment that's basically going to see to the establishment of 20 100-megawatt power stations across states of northern Nigeria. So that is going to be extremely important, not just in terms of the FDI itself, but also in terms of further power generation and energizing industry across the north, similar to what you now have in the south. So that's going to be important. In addition to that, the president finalized on a $1 billion defense agreement, essentially that will see to the resuscitation and rejuvenation of the Defense Industries Corporation of Nigeria, DICON, basically a partnership with the managing arm of the military-industrial complex of the Indian Armed Forces. That partnership is going to allow DICON to attain 40% self-sufficiency in the local production and manufacturing of the defense equipments and requirements it needs within the country, meaning that obviously we're going to crash the level of import of defense equipment from other parts of the world. This is very strategic. I can tell you exclusively, this is the first time this will be known, but tonight, just a few hours ago, about 9 or 10 o'clock local time in New Delhi, Mr. President welcomed another set of investors who essentially are providing solutions that have to do with new aircrafts across the board. And I can't be too specific, but specific enough to say that the president he has gone beyond the point of saying we need to, bring in fighter jets from India or bring in fighter jets from the United States. What he is now saying and what he is now demanding of his partners is saying anyone who wants to bring these things into Nigeria must now develop the entire ecosystem of sustainability within Nigeria so that we don't just have the item and then we have to look to India and other countries when it's time for maintenance and other things. We have those things in the country with the facilities, all of the entire integrated ecosystem in the country so that we can sustain them, maintain them with Nigerian labor, with Nigerian-made parts, etc. That is the future that Mr. President is building for us with the interventions he's making with investors from India. And again, $14 billion just from Indian investors alone in the last 2 days. He hasn't even started going around the world. The president's aspirations are big. He's delivering on them, and he's proving once again why it is that what he achieved as governor of Lagos, he will achieve it for the entire Nigerian Federation as president. And we're looking forward to seeing how everything unfolds.
I'm sure Nigerians are very, very happy with this development. But what other areas of mutual interest and investments is the delegation from Nigeria focusing on at the summit?
Yes, it's a great question. So I've just touched on just a few items. There are several other investments that make up the $14 billion. But let me also say that aside from the direct financial FDI pledges from these investors, there were also three very important MOUs that were signed, government-to-government agreements. Essentially, two of them have to do with digital economic transformation. Right now, India boasts of one of the greatest, most developed digital infrastructure footprints of any country in the world, rivaling China and getting up there in competition with the United States. Not just in terms of the quality of their digital infrastructure, but also in terms of the quantity and scope of reach. You're talking about a country that has, a population of well over 1 billion people, right? So they have to do it at scale. We are a country of 200 million people that will eventually be 450 million people over the next 20 years. So we also are looking at how to scale up quality digital infrastructure. So it was only natural under the leadership of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu that the Ministry of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy has now signed an MOU with the Indian Ministry of Electronics and Communications and Innovation to essentially share essentially their entire blueprint of digital economic transformation between governments, so that we can adapt their best practices, learn from their failures, and be able to skip steps of development as a result of the learnings from their failures while applying their successes according to the nuances and peculiarities of the Nigerian digital infrastructural ecosystem. So we have two MOUs that deal with that, government to government on digital infrastructure. The third one is very important. The third one is under the Federal Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry, which is an MOU signed with the Indian government's Investment Promotion and Trade Facilitation Agency, known as Invest India. Now, effectively, what that MOU does is it's an MOU between the Infrastructure Corporation of Nigeria and Invest India. But what it does is that it's going to mobilize capital toward very specific and targeted physical infrastructure projects in Nigeria, with combined assets from Indian business people and the Indian government to be able to invest in critical public infrastructure in Nigeria, which will obviously reduce the burden of expenditure on our own kind of public purse with respect to how we're going to develop our infrastructure. It will allow us to do more quickly, because we're going to be sharing that burden with Invest India and the opportunities that they're going to have. That's physical infrastructure: roads, bridges, airports, seaports, power plants, and the like. But it also deals with digital infrastructure. So we're going to provide a platform for them to be able to mobilize Indian industrialists to be able to further, invest in the digital infrastructure ecosystem within Nigeria. And we happen to be very fortunate that His Excellency, Mr. President, has appointed a Minister of Communications and Digital Economy that is inspiring so much confidence right now as we visited our Indian counterparts, because of his transformative track record in the private sector as somebody who has developed innovation hubs across the African continent. So people are ready to work with Dr. Bosun Tijani under the leadership of President Tinubu, and we're beginning to see a lot of fruit from those engagements. But there, again, I want to emphasize, all that I've described, which is so much, is only the first leg of this trip. We have not even concluded yet. Saturday and Sunday is the actual G20 summit that we're here to participate in. Everything that I've just described are preliminary sideline, initiatives of His Excellency Mr. President out of his proactive spirit and intention to develop our country quickly through the promotion and attraction of foreign direct investment. But when we get to the G20, what you're going to now have are bilateral meetings between His Excellency Mr. President and his counterparts, such as German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, such as with South Korean President Yeol, such as with Brazilian President Lula da Silva, and they are going to be coming to the G20 with their investors. So we are just getting started in terms of what is on the table for Nigeria to grab. And the reason why this is all happening now in a way that we've not seen before is because this is the first time in our nation's history where we have a bona fide businessman who understands, as both a president and previously as a subnational administrator, what the various levels of our federal system, what the various complexities are and potential encumbrances and roadblocks are for doing business in the country, because he's been a governor and now he's been a president and he's been a businessman. He knows the language of business people. He's speaking it to them, and now they are listening.
So let's talk about the president's delegation. On that entourage, several captains of industry. Why such a big delegation?
Well, let's be clear about something now. When we talk about delegations, let's be clear about what's publicly funded and what's not publicly funded. We are not paying for the private jet trips of Nigeria's most successful business people to come to India. They are footing their own bills. They're flying on their own jets at their own expense, booking their own hotels on their own expense. That has nothing to do with government financing or government funding. I want to make that very clear. Secondly, it's important for us to have as many Nigerian captains of industry as possible on the ground, because it is through that process of cross-fertilization that you're able to create these win-win partnerships with Nigerian entrepreneurial capital in addition to Indian entrepreneurial capital that will allow you to develop the kinds of mega projects and mega investments that will lead to large-scale employment opportunities for unemployed Nigerian young people across our country. The president is very clear about this, whether it is his government team, his cabinet, or whether it is his approach to the private sector. You do not get to your point of destiny as an individual without the help of other people. That applies to us as individuals, where all of us need somebody to help our destinies, to lift us up from one level to another. Everybody needs that. The same thing happens at a national scale. Nations grow because people partner to make nations grow. So this is what the president believes in, teamwork to achieve a joint task. He did it in Lagos with an effective team made up of people, of Nigerians from all parts of the country. He's doing it again as president on a larger scale with more power and more resources and more ability to remove those bottlenecks and stumbling blocks from growth and foreign direct investment. He's doing it now. We are seeing the results already, and he is just getting started.
So let's go back to the G20 summit scheduled for this weekend, but specifically the membership discussion. Will the G20 summit agree to admit Nigeria as a member as been demanded?
What we do not think is wise at this juncture is to preempt a process that has not yet played itself out. What the president is very clear about and what he's very pragmatic about is the need to consult very widely before taking very important decisions. He is someone who believes in the power of consensus, in the power of hearing everybody's idea at the table before arriving at an informed decision. So we are currently having wide-ranging consultations from within the government, across branches of the government, and when those consultations are completed, the president will take a final decision on whether or not Nigeria will apply formally for membership of the G20. But I think it goes without saying that any entity, any organization that is made up of 80% of global GDP, that is made up of 75% of total global trade, that is made up of 60% of the world's population, that is an entity and an organization that you would be foolhardy not to at least consider joining. So we are considering it, we're consulting, and at the right time the president will take a decision. But I do believe that given the central role Nigeria's economy will be playing globally over the course of the next 25 to 50 years, it's a no-brainer that as Africa's largest democracy and as Africa's largest economy and as a nation that will eventually have the third largest population in the world by the end of this century, that we are at the front lines of every global conversation, at every meaningful global table, of which the G20 is just one.
Right. So while we wait for the outcome of the consultations, but do you think Nigeria has the economic potential to join the group, or just by name?
Oh, certainly not. There's no such thing as joining the G20 by name. You're either at the table or you're not at the table. If you're at the table, then you're going to enjoy all the full benefits of membership, just as all G20 members do currently enjoy. So there's no way around that. India was once in our position. India was once a promising democracy, a promising economy with a large market and a large population. But they did not have the leadership that was able to take advantage of all of those benefits and characteristics to turn it into what it now is. Fortunately for India, over the course of the last 10 years or so, under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, they have found the leadership, the visionary leadership, the practical and pragmatic leadership to take the right decisions needed to enhance public infrastructure, to unite the country, to create hundreds of billions of dollars worth of new foreign direct investment across sectors that has now led India to be a frontline member of the G20, that has made India one of the largest growing, fastest growing economies in the world and one of the largest economies in the world, a multi-trillion-dollar economy. And we believe that Nigeria has all of the similar benefits. We have a successful diaspora that can bring the country hundreds of billions of dollars annually when we get our act fully together. We have a massive market with a demographic dividend of young people making up 70% of the future and present population. We have everything required to be what India has become. And I believe most global forecasters and wise geopolitical strategists understand what Nigeria will mean to the global economy in the future. But our job now is to move very swiftly from promise and potential into actualization and prosperity. And that is the focus of the president, who did the same in Lagos and will now do the same for Nigeria.
Right, so before I let you go, Mr. Ngelale, the president's victory has been upheld by the Presidential Election Petitions Court. How would you react to that? Expected, right?
Well, not only was it expected, we've said from the beginning, very coolly, very calmly, and very consistently, that you cannot have an election where the incumbent president loses his state for the first time in his political career, where the presidential candidate of the governing party loses his state for the first time in his political career, and you'll now say that that election was rigged. It simply doesn't make any sense. An election in which the national chairman at that time of the ruling party lost his own Senate seat, and people are saying that election was rigged. And when we've asked the question, what is your evidence? The court process that played out through the tribunal proceedings clearly proved that not only was there a total deficit of black and white evidence that they could point to as a merit in their case, in their petition, but we have now seen that almost all grounds on which they were standing have been totally and thoroughly cast out as a nullity. So when we've seen the kind of a thorough judgment that we saw, a 12-hour judgment, essentially a reading, point by point, letter by letter, in its thoroughness, we would now know that any attempt now, and we totally respect the legal right of all political gladiators to go to the Supreme Court to exercise their rights under the Constitution and under our electoral laws. But even as they do so, if you looked at that judgment and the thoroughness with which the grounds of their petitions were thrown out, you would now know that they're probably wasting their time and money. But we look forward to meeting them at the apex court if that's what they so decide.
All right, so what aspects of that judgment was most significant for you?
Well, I don't know if there's one. I think if there was anything that stuck out to me as extremely significant, it is the nearly unanimous rejection of almost all grounds on which they were standing. I mean, if you look at the kinds of abstract, empty positions they were taking. I mean, the notion, for example, just as one example, that voters in FCT are somehow supreme and superior to other Nigerian citizens voting in other non-FCT states. I think that that notion runs contrary to the basis of our citizenship in this country, the basis of federal character, the basis of the constitutional rights accorded to the citizens of our great nation. So seeing that thrown out was not a surprise. What was a surprise to us was the fact that certain presidential candidates thought that that was the basis on which they would climb into power from the back door. We always thought that that was a ridiculous argument. That the FCT is some kind of super entity, some super state, super unit, and we're glad that some clarity has now been brought to what we thought was a ridiculous assertion in the first place.
Ajurin Galali, Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and thank you for always bringing us up to speed with happenings within the purview of the presidency. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. It is about 1 o'clock in the morning here, so I'm going to get some sleep. Thank you for having me.
And thank you so much for watching. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But the conversation continues from here. Get in touch with us on Twitter at TVC News NG and at Olajumoke using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Good night.
Vida White Card.
I'm your big fan too.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, brother. And I'm chilling with my main guy, Vida. Alpha, network problem.
Yes, well, got me.
Let me turn on my hotspot.
When you're on 9 confirmed from 9 Mobile, you get a super gift of 1,000 Naira just for joining the network. 900% bonus on every recharge. 100% data bonus for 6 months and double data bonus on your first recharge of the month.
Get a new SIM or dial *1 now.
9 Mobile. Martin Luther King Jr. was born in Atlanta, Georgia, January 15, 1929. The son of a Baptist minister, King received a doctorate degree in theology and in 1955 helped organize the first major protest of the African-American civil rights movement, the successful Montgomery bus boycott. King participated in and led marches for the right to vote, desegregation, labor rights, and other civil rights. He advocated civil disobedience and nonviolent opposition against segregation in the South, influenced by Mahatma Gandhi. The peaceful protests he led throughout the American South were often met with violence. Nonetheless, Dr. King and his supporters were persistent and the movement gained momentum. Dr. King was a powerful orator. He appealed to Christian and American ideals and won growing support from the